Welcome, this is Paradigm Shift. I'm your host, Jelena. Last week we were talking about different things that I actually can't remember. Oh, right, quarantine struggles. Things that I've been sorting out, and hopefully getting better at. I asked you guys what questions you guys had on self-care, the journey to self-love, confidence, and all that jazz, and that's pretty much what this is going to be about. So if you want to be more confident and you want to like yourself, stay. If you don't want to do that, stay anyway. I'm sure it'll be fun. So the first question, which pretty much everybody generally asks me, is how do you get started with loving yourself? Because there seems to be a lot of different hurdles that come along with that. So one issue is that people are usually uncomfortable. For example, people don't feel comfortable saying it to the camera and then posting it online, which I completely get. And other people just don't really feel comfortable even saying it to the mirror when they're alone, which I also get. I used to tell myself nice things in passing, not as consistent as I do now, but I would say things to myself nicely in the mirror, and I would kind of tear up sometimes, and so that was always really difficult. And just recently have I thought, I use humor to cope, and so that's what I did for my first video, and then it ended up being more real. And so in that respect, for those of you who do feel uncomfortable, or I get that comment a lot where it's like, well, I'm so happy for you, but I could never do that. You absolutely could. It's just, it is very overwhelming, and it is scary, and I completely get that, because it is, truly. And so my advice to you, I guess, is different things. So one would be whispering it out loud seems to help. Writing it down to yourself, like in a letter or just in a journal, also helps. What's important to remember is that it has to be coming directly from you. You have to be the one saying it. I got a question earlier from a friend if I've tried subliminals or if I feel subliminals work, and I've tried subliminals before, and I'm not sure if it's because I didn't fully believe that it would work, the same way it works with hypnosis, or if it's because I wasn't very consistent with it, but it never really seemed to work. I think, personally, I feel that when somebody else is telling you those things, you're in your head already battling that, because you're not the one saying the words, and so it's a lot easier to defend yourself from the good things if you're not the one saying the good things. I also talked to her about how with The Fourth Kind, the movie, which I've talked about before, at the very end, the alien observer, and her two friends who were also there during an alien encounter, she's trying to tell them, like, hey, you were there too, like, we're not crazy, we saw what happened, we were there. And the two guys that are with her shake their head, and they say they don't want to say it. And the reason is when you say it out loud, it becomes more real. It becomes true. I would assume much like Twilight. Once you say it, it becomes a fact. And so it's just really important to say it out loud, and definitely from yourself. The next question, when it comes to how do you get started, which I didn't think was gonna be a hurdle, but it kind of makes sense, is how do I choose my positive affirmations? Me personally, I'm very good at honing in on what bothers me. I think mainly because I talk to myself a lot when I'm alone, clearly. But I also brainstorm about how I feel and maybe why. So the root of a lot of my issues is that I don't feel like others think I'm capable enough to make my own decisions, that I'm not smart enough or not experienced enough, and I'm, recently realizing that that's not actually true. Because when I place myself in the scenarios that other people have told me, I'm like, yeah, no, I definitely would not have done that. Perhaps I am crazy and quirky in one way, but I don't think so much as to shift my entire life. down a certain path, And so, like, for me, telling myself that I am capable is almost like believing that maybe I am capable. It's one of those things where it's like, when people tell you you're pretty, and then you kind of start to believe it, sometimes, not all the time. But that's definitely part of it. And so for me, how do I choose positive affirmations? I pretty much just use what is my negative self-talk, and then I try to flip it on its head by doing the positive affirmations that go against it, pretty much. I would also like this time to talk about self-care in the sense of both physical and mental care. So, I think I've mentioned it before, that the chemicals in our little monkey brain affect our physicality, and our physicality can also affect the chemicals in our little monkey brain. And so, with that being said, it's really important to take care of both to get better. So for mental care, it includes a positive affirmations, it includes journaling, it includes talking about how you feel, how you want to get better, things that you love. And the physicality of it would be drinking water, reminding yourself to take a bath, to brush your teeth. Of course, these are minimal kind of things, but they are important to a lot of people. And I know that it's sometimes hard to get out of bed and to truly take care of yourself. And sometimes we're just greasy little monkeys, and that's okay. Sorry. But yeah, it's something that we have to take care of ourselves in every regard. It also kind of helps us feel valuable. Like, if I treat myself as if I'm valuable, even without doing it intentionally, I do feel, prideful that I'm able to do it, but also feeling special because I did it for myself, if that makes sense. So on the topic of how to get started, that's pretty much most of my advice. I can't really think of much else, but yes. So the next step after you start is, how do you keep going? This is a big topic because it's really easy to start a habit, but it's really difficult to actually establish it. And so one is a buddy system. Back before COVID, people would go to the gym together, which I was always very admirable, which I always admired. Yes, I'm a communication major. Anywho, I always admired that in people. A, because you're getting better, you're going to the gym, you're taking care of yourself. But B, you're sharing that with somebody else, and it's like a tag team kind of thing. Like, you want to be there for you, but you also want to be there for them. And it just creates this whole bonding thing, and I just love relationships, And so the buddy system is a really good way of being consistent with whatever you choose to do, whether it be positive affirmations or drinking water. If you have a friend, one of my followers commented one time that her and her friend text each other every day to do their positive affirmations, and I love that. That's actually perfect. I hadn't even thought about that, but that is a remarkable idea, yes. The second one on how to keep going is, it's not always going to be easy. There are days where you don't feel like doing it. You don't feel like moving. You don't feel like you have enough energy to say the words and mean it. And I totally get that. I mean, today is my 18th day. I feel, I should have turned off my notifications. That's fine. Today's my 18th day, and I've realized there have been a couple of days. I mean, even this morning, I didn't feel like doing it, so I kind of put it off until the evening. But I did it, and that's all that matters. But on the hard days, we have to remind ourselves to keep going, I mean, I'm not saying you have to be happy about it all the time, but you certainly do have to put in that effort, The way that, I try to do that on the days that I don't feel I have, my chair squeaks a lot, enough energy to actually do any of these things. Here are my tips. If this hopefully helps, let me know if it does, or if it unfortunately does not. This kind of goes back to when you're uncomfortable. is kind of the same thing, because sometimes we're too tired to be comfortable, if that makes sense. And so whispering your positive affirmations helps a lot. For me, holding myself, but again, my love language is physical touch, so maybe that's why it helps me. But it's almost like cradling yourself. Writing it down helps a lot. And mainly what you're trying to do is just imagine that it's someone else and that you're trying to take care of them. And then just be aware that you just have to be patient with yourself. Honestly, you guys, you have to remember that kindness is something that most everyone deserves, and you are part of that group of people that deserves to feel good, about yourselves. It's just part of it. And so these are that's pretty much most of the general stuff that has to go with like the actual journey itself. And then there's some other questions that you guys gave to me or asked me, and so that's what I'm gonna do now. So the next question is, how has my personally mentality changed? I've noticed, and this is only 18 days, I think I even felt it maybe 13 days in, is that even when I was really overwhelmed or really sad or really hard on myself, I realized that it was a lot easier to be kind to myself. It was almost like I had built up resilience, because it wasn't me against the world and also me against me. Now it was just me against the world and me with me, if that makes sense. And so I felt, more able to comfort myself. I felt comfortable with comforting myself, I didn't feel like I didn't deserve it. I didn't feel like bad-mouthing myself. It was all easier, which is one of the biggest things for me, because I've never really truly comforted myself. I've tried to ease myself out of different, I think, anxiety attacks, but I don't think it was ever because I thought I needed to care for myself. It was mainly because I needed to stop drawing attention, or I didn't want to make a big deal. And so for me, that's what has changed the most. The next question is, how do you set goals? Or what do I personally think on goals? So I talk a lot about habits, a lot about habits. It's because they're vital to success or to feeling better, which is also a success. And so yes, it's important to have goals of like where you want to be, what you want to do. But loving yourself and appreciating yourself and gaining confidence is an ongoing act that never ceases, even when you do reach a goal weight or even when you do reach a goal position in your job. Being confident and loving yourself never truly stops. I think it was Stephen R. Covey that said, love is a verb, not a noun. And so when it comes to the self, it works the same way. And habits are things that last forever. And they are something we definitely have to establish. So drinking water in the morning, having some sort of mindfulness time set aside. Those are all important habits that lead up to our goals and then beyond, It's also important to set goals that you feel are actually attainable. Like, I can't say I want to be a billionaire in a year. First off, I would never want to be a billionaire. Eat the rich. I would never want to have that much money and do absolutely nothing with it. If you are a billionaire and you have that much money, it's because you don't give enough back to the people. But anyway, this is not about my hatred for capitalism. This is about my love for myself and how you guys should do it too. And so ultimately, that's habits and goals go hand in hand, and I recommend that that's what you guys do. My favorite book on habits is Atomic Habits by James Cleary. I think Cleary, yes. And you guys should check up on that. And if you guys want a summary of that, just let me know so I can go over the main points. But I do recommend you read the book. He's a phenomenal writer, and it's very motivational the way he puts it. The next question is, does self-care cross into something negative? And the example that they used was like, what if you tell yourself to take a nap because you're tired and so you sleep in all day? And so I'm not really sure if there's any, I mean, I'm sure there's science behind it, but I have never really run into it. What I do know is that it's almost impossible to lie to ourselves. And with that being said, if I tell myself that I'm tired because, or I sleep in all day because I'm tired, then there's no way that I can lie to myself. If I'm doing it because I'm avoiding something, that's going to be in the back of my mind. But if I'm doing it because I'm exhausted, then that's also going to be on the back of my mind. There's no real way to outrun it. It's just sometimes you do have to let yourself indulge in those things because it is you taking care of yourself. You can't be strong all the time. Self-love is just like any other skill. It takes practice, and you're not going to be good at it from the get-go. Just to help those out, because I know, or those people out, because I know sometimes, once again, it just feels like, oh, well, I'm glad you're doing it, but I could never. You could, it's not going to hit you right away. It's going to feel like you're faking it, like you're just a poser, but it does feel more comfortable after a while. You just have to be patient with yourself. But I don't think self-care could cross into something negative. I think self-love could become something negative, like overtly, being arrogant or narcissistic and not really caring for others or being empathetic to others. It goes from loving yourself or not loving yourself to not loving anybody else. And it has its pros and its cons. The next question is, why can I be a better person when I'm alone from family? How can I do that when I'm living with them? And I can speak from personal experience, and I feel everybody else can too. I don't have strict parents, but I certainly, I guess they are a little strict, but not really. They just care a lot, and I think that shows in different ways. But now it's starting to change, but I can definitely speak on this. I was in FCCLA, which I talk about quite a bit. It was a leadership organization in high school that I was luckily a part of, and I was an officer in, that allowed me to pretty much travel around the U.S. I went to California and Georgia and Tennessee for a week each in the summer for a national conference. And I learned that when I was by myself, I was so incredibly strong and confident, and I got things done, and I woke up early, I went and worked out. It was crazy. It was like a completely different person. It's like I was an LA vlogger or something. But and then I would come home, and it would almost like that part of me would just dissipate, or I would just wrap it up and just save it for later. But the reason why it's so difficult to be the better parts of yourself that we usually can be when we're alone, when we're with our family, is because we have certain habits established with our family. It's kind of like an ongoing cycle. So it's like our family has a certain idea of who we are. We feed into that because we feel it's very difficult to go against it, and then it proves to them that that's how we are, and then it is that ongoing cycle that is very hard to break. But one thing that I will say is, on the topic of like, how can I be the person I want to around my family? And this goes for any kind of family, because it's not always like super toxic. It's just, old habits die hard. And so the best way to establish new habits is first, consistency, which we've talked about, but also space. People are more likely to develop and establish good habits in new spaces. For example, if you go to a new Walmart or a new grocery store and you start picking healthy food from there, you're more likely to stick with those buying habits because it's a new place. When you get a new house, when you get a new apartment, when you go to a new school, all those things are the same way. You have that opportunity, and people feel that way because it's natural that when we go into a new environment, we're able to build these new habits. And so when it comes to family, when it comes to living with them, especially right now, where we don't really have any sort of escapism in our own room, is to find a small space to develop the habits. So, for example, I practice doing this in my room at my desk. I do, I go on my phone and answer comments on my bed. I practice in my chair that I'm currently sitting in, practice music, in the middle of my room, because it is a small space. So I do try to divvy up my action between school and work that's not really work, which is this, and music, just so that I can practice being myself here in my room, so that when I go out of the confines that is my sleeping space, I can be more prepared to be myself, more specifically the better parts of myself that I know are a part of me. And so that's how I'm doing it. So essentially just build habits in small spaces and be aware of yourself outside of those spaces. It's really odd to act a different way in front of family, only because they usually call you out. So if you never wash dishes and then you start trying to because you want to help out around the house, and they're like, oh, guess who finally wants to wash dishes? And it does feel bad. But remember that you're doing it for, the family as a whole, but you're doing it for you. You're proving to yourself that you deserve to live in a clean space. You deserve to have that, This is not saying that messy rooms are bad. I'm just saying, like, for me, I like feeling like I can take care of myself, which goes back to the whole physicality and mental care. So the next question is how to flip the script on negative self-talk. We kind of went through this earlier on, I think, positive affirmations I talked about. But what's also important is Brene Brown talks about this in her Netflix special and her TED Talk, I believe. But the dark thoughts, the gremlins, as she calls them, and our family calls it that too, or my family calls it that too. We would call them the gremlins. Pretty much anything negative that we tell ourselves, or that creeps into our thoughts when we're trying to do something or not do something. And they're very vicious. They like to get us when we're alone and kind of down. And so the best way to flip that negative self-talk is to write it down or talk to somebody about it. Because the moment you're like, yeah, I feel down, and they're going to be like, well, why? And I was like, well, I wanted to get up at 8 and I woke up at 9. And they'll be like, well, it's not that late. And it's like, yeah, I know. And they're like, yeah, you shouldn't, tell yourself you're an awful person because you didn't wake up an hour earlier. And yeah, should I wake up earlier next time? Yeah, if I want to, and I should. But am I going to hate myself because I didn't today? No, that does nothing. But those are the gremlins trying to get me. And so, especially when you write them down, you write down all the bad thoughts that come into your head. And you're like, it's almost like as soon as you shine a light on them, they don't want to be there anymore, if that makes sense. And so for me, writing them down has helped me a lot. Because on the one hand, writing down nice things makes you feel better. Writing down the bad thoughts seems to make them go away. So I'm not quite sure what science is behind that, but I know that seems to help me the most. And so just as like a thing, I'm on day 18 and I definitely feel a lot better and a lot more comfortable with my body, with my personality, with myself. And I do recommend that you try it. Try it just for a week and then keep going and going and going, because you can do this. It is not just for people who are quote-unquote strong. It is for everybody. It is built for people who don't feel strong, actually. If you're confident and you want to take better care of yourself and practice these things to maintain it, then good for you. If you feel like you're at the bottom and you space out and every little thing sends you into a spiral because you're not really comfortable with existing, you should also try this. Yes, I'm speaking from personal experience. No, I won't elaborate quite yet. But I definitely think that you should give this a go. It worked for me. It is working for me. I can't even wait to see what a year will bring. But I do hope that you guys take this and it helps you in some form or fashion. And with that, I think is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out my TikTok, my Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe. And I think that'll be all. Love y'all. Stay safe and stay kind.